Hello, I'm Tian Wei, and welcome to Looking Ahead 2023. Chinese government decided to optimize COVID control measures at the end of 2022 after 3 years of strict prevention and control policies. Chinese policymakers suggest at various occasions that over the past 1,000 days, efforts to curb viral spread have saved numerous lives. And now, with COVID death rates plunging in different parts of the world, it's time for the Chinese society to gradually go back to normality as well. The decision is believed to reinvigorate the economy. More people are eager to go shopping and dine in restaurants again, which could be signs that a foreseeable consumer spending rebound on the way. Flight connections between China and other parts of the world are also being gradually restored as we speak. The annual Economic Work Conference has drafted a blueprint for the country's priorities for the year 2023. And again, China is seeking collective action on a global scale to pursue common interests and take on challenges. We see the changes of policies in China concerning Omicron. How do you see this process?
The shift of the policy is towards giving more resources for protecting especially those vulnerable population, older population, and to flatten the curve. So I think that's the most important thing.
To educate the general public, to explain the rationale of the new measures, and also to vaccinate the elderly very quickly, and also to stockpile effective antivirals, and most importantly, to protect the hospitals from collapsing.
There's a broad signaling of reform direction, which of course follows up on the 20th Party Congress. But also there's some old themes of reform and opening are more emphasized. Specifically, I feel that the emphasis on the development of the private sector is important. Before there was some debate on whether China would still support the private sector, I think there's a lot of emphasis on that, the encouragement of the private sector and encouragement of foreign direct investment. If you look at the new generation coming onto the market, previously they really found that in those sectors that are not doing so well at this point in time, and that is in the platform economy, in finance, and in real estate. So I think the emphasis on those sectors, especially on the platform economy, is going to be positive for creating a lot of jobs in the services sector that would be good for graduates. In addition, on the demand side, the emphasis on increased consumption, not just in this document, but also in the joint document by the State Council and the Central Committee on promoting consumption, I think will benefit the services sector a lot in the recovery from COVID that we expect in the coming months to evolve.
Hearing the echoes of Deng Xiaoping's "cross the river by touching the stones" is something that we in the West would be relieved by. And the other message that President Xi wants to improve the conditions for foreign capital to come into China is a very welcome message, considering all of the discussion about common prosperity and dual circulation strategies that implied a more closing of foreign capital or a redirection of foreign capital toward the building of national champions. Now that it seems that the recovery phase in this post-COVID environment is going to really depend on not just boosting domestic demand, but will also require foreign capital to participate.
A successful and prosperous China is so incredibly important, not only for the Chinese people, but for the rest of the world. And I think China's leadership on trade, investments, but also stability in China and also reviving economic growth will be very important. Medium term and long term, I'm very optimistic on China's growth and prosperity. I think we all are now faced with short-term challenges that we have to overcome. It's based on the pandemic and the COVID. It's based on the slowing global recovery. It is also, we are seeing that climate change is not something theoretical anymore. It is really happening. And Chinese leadership in all this area is incredibly important. And we will not get out of the impasse or break any of these impasses without a better collaboration between China and the US in the years to come.
Yes, these are very challenging times. Look at the case of China. Not only now, but infrastructure has always played a key role in the expansion of businesses, and even playing some counter-cyclical roles whenever there was an international crisis. Infrastructure being there in China is one of the drivers of economic recovery or economic expansion. I was telling a friend the other day, Tianwei, that the first time I was in China, that was April 2004, so about 18 years ago. And the change that we have seen over this 18 years is truly remarkable. But I think you were right. What I said about the E7 and their economic might when compared to the G7 does not necessarily follow in other least developing countries. There is a lot of vulnerability out there, and I think the international community should come together to provide those resources and for those countries that are in a more fragile situation.
And the reason why there is a lot of uncertainty is that the price of risk has risen. COVID has pushed up the price of risk. The war in Ukraine has pushed up the price of risk. So this is a reality, and a more risky world is not conducive to proper long-term investment decisions by business. And what I observe in Europe is, for instance, a different attitude vis-à-vis China from major big businesses who are established in China and who want to keep investing in China and who want to keep working with the Chinese market on the one side, and on the other side, small businesses for whom the price of risk is higher and who are more uncertain about the future of China in economic terms or in political terms. And what I think people like me are trying to do is to stabilize this so that long-term business decisions remain based on the rationality of comparative advantages and the growth of markets, instead of being, as it is today, hit by various geopolitical tensions. The US now have come to the conclusion that China is a threat for the US, that they need to address this threat and weaken China so that it's less of a threat for the US. And the way to do that is to try and deglobalize China, because China has become stronger because of globalization. The EU does not feel the same way as the US in terms of China being a big threat for a variety of reasons. And B, we do not agree that even if we were to consider China as a threat, deglobalization is the way to go. Because we believe in Europe that a globalized China is better than a deglobalized China.
At any situation and any stage of development, we need to have the market and the government to work together in an organic way. We cannot separate market and the state, and they have to work organically. But now the situation changes from time to time. When you have some kind of external shock, or when you have some kind of business downturns, under the kind of situation, the government need to offset those kind of shocks or downturn. And at that time, certainly, the government need to play a larger role than the private sectors. But overall, you need to have the market and the state to work together, and overall, the economic activities will be carried out by the private sectors. And the government role is just a facilitation role to allow the private sector to work more efficiently. I think that we need to rely on domestic demand, and domestic demand has two components, and we should make the investment that to be effective in area which can raise labor productivity to increase labor income and consumption.
You're watching Looking Ahead 2023. I'm Tian Wei. As we bid goodbye to the year 2022, many hope we together have learned from the challenges we met. Trust shattered when it was mostly needed, price paid when cooperation dried up. Over the last 2 months of 2022, we have seen efforts to increase engagements on the global stage. The G20 Summit, APEC Economic Leaders Meeting, COP27, COP15, just to name a few. But translating words into actions, a lot still need to be done. Setting priorities, building bridges, and consensus are very crucial.
In reality, the world has moved closer together because we are moving from a physical world much more in a digital world. And the digital world by nature is much more globally oriented. Needs what we feel in the World Economic Forum, a multi-stakeholder approach. It's certainly governments who have to be in the lead, but business, most of the solutions will come through innovation from business. And we have to integrate the large population. We have to mentor the population and to show through our good examples that the future requires this change, and the change at the end ultimately will be beneficial for them. I respect China's achievements, which are tremendous over the last over 40 years since the opening up and policy and reform policy came into action. I think it's a role model for many countries, but I think also we should leave it to each country to make its own decision what system it wants to adopt. And I think we should be very careful in imposing systems. But the Chinese model is certainly a very attractive model for quite a number of countries.
Well, we should stand back for a moment and appreciate the fact that the G20, and I'm a co-founder of the G20 when it was started at summit level in 2008-9. And I remember dealing a lot with Chinese leaders at the time and American leaders at the time about what we'd do in the global financial crisis. And we decided to create this thing at summit level. One of the advantages we thought of at the time is that in geopolitics, when things get really bad between whichever countries, the thing about the G20 is it does each year bring everyone around one table. And therefore the advantage has been on this occasion is that you've had this opportunity for President Xi Jinping and President Biden to get together, as you've had, for example, with Prime Minister Albanese and President Xi Jinping. In other words, it has its own inherent value in normalizing the discourse. And then there's a further reason.
So in the face of these challenges, the SCO pursues a spirit of optimism. We believe that the challenges themselves are opportunities. In the face of challenges, we must further strengthen our cooperation and promote our development. Through our unity, mutual trust, and cooperation, we can promote the development of the region, and then drive the international community out of the current predicament. Indeed, this challenge is an opportunity, which is the wisdom left by our ancestors in China. When I was working in Brussels, I remember that our leader talked about it, saying that the word crisis in Chinese is composed of the two words danger and opportunity. In fact, such a concept has become well known today. But the important thing is, who can turn the concept into a guide for their own actions? As for what kind of crisis will bring what kind of opportunities, there is no set pattern. It depends on your effort. The SAO's goal is to strengthen unity, mutual trust, and cooperation. It strives to face difficulties, to solve such difficulties, and to find their own shortcomings from difficulties.
So the important thing for them would be to give a signal, look, we do not know the solutions, but we know that this is the direction, and solutions will be something that comes as a result of a collective effort. That's the message which people nowadays need, because otherwise the fear of divisions will simply be too strong, and that's very bad for any attempt to solve problems. No, the immediate thing is this: let us try to build a minimum or a modicum of hope and trust that we understand the problems and the need to cooperate.
It could be stronger, but it's important. Every step forward is important. And it's important to remember that major efforts sometimes are iterative. By that, I mean, they start small, then you have to build on it. Next year after that, build on it even more. But once we get a start, that's extremely important. And, one could say that RCEP is a good start, and ASEAN countries should keep working on it, make it even stronger. But one could also say that the talks between President Biden and Xi are also a start. We just build on them. And one way to build on it is to schedule in meaningful periodic talks again. That'd go a long, long way. So Bali is a good start, but that's good. It's great. If Bali hadn't happened, we'd be in a real kettle of fish right now. But Bali did happen, and that's very positive.
We live in a very interesting world because we are all different. So we are not similar to each other. So, but we have to face reality. So the world will listening strong ones. So Asia getting stronger. In 25 years, Asia will produce half of the world GDP. So what is happening in Asia is that we have to understand each other. We are very different. And project, for instance, like Shanghai Cooperation Organization, is clearly show that Asians will come close to each other. Asian genes is genes about family, about unification, about understanding, about trust. So we're gonna get closer to each other, and together we'll be stronger, more prosperous, and we have better voice. And G20 is indeed the unique forum where Asian countries could demonstrate more or less unified and synchronous and harmonious way of communicating to the rest of the world. Asian way is not insistence, not pressure. Yeah, this is what my understanding from the deep of my heart, because I'm Asian. And then to build harmonious world, Asia will be able to deliver its own contribution to make our world better place to live to everyone.
Dialogues among cultures and civilizations is crucial to building trust. Some of the world's top political leaders have well recognized the importance of understanding others well. Chinese President Xi Jinping also mentioned in various occasions the importance of accommodation among different civilizations.
Diversity spurs interaction among civilizations, which in turn promotes mutual learning and their further development. We need to promote exchanges and mutual learning among countries, nations, and cultures around the world.
But how to sincerely learn from the others and therefore understand ourselves and our world better? Philosophers from west to the east give their answers. As we are heading for a new year, their analyses are really worth listening.
The Confucian tradition, with its emphasis upon ecological thinking, upon interdependence, upon trying to get the most out of the circumstances, is something that is necessary to address the pressing issues of the time. We have global warming, pandemic, environmental degradation, food and water shortage, proxy wars, international terror. All of the problems that the human being is facing today can only be resolved through collaboration, by people working together, by countries working together. And so my reading of Confucianism is that it has a very important contribution to make as an alternative to the ideology of individualism. We're not individuals. Everything we do is in association with other people. Everything that nation states do is really, it's an ecology, a political and social ecology. And so we have to recognize it as such.
Confucius does not speak modern Mandarin or modern Chinese. This requires the academic community to make a painstaking effort to understand its own civilization and paraphrase it in modern language. And at the same time, we should strive to understand other civilizations and use a form of language that can be used to carry out modern transformation and cross-civilization communication, such as the 天下 term. And I think it definitely is that is differs from the notion of the so-called international system, because 天下 denies the notion of a nation, and 天下 is not a cosmopolitan order. 天下 has a very, very strong sense of morality.
I think it is very important that we remind ourselves in all regions of the world, that we remind ourselves that we as human beings, we are a ubiquitous species. And we always have been a ubiquitous species. That means this process that we call globalization, it did not just start in the 20th century. Even Neolithic people, they have exchanged technologies, they have exchanged goods over vast spaces throughout the whole of Eurasia, as we now know. And the ancient empires of the Indus River Valley and Mesopotamia, they were trading already. They had even commensurable measurements in play to have a common system of trade. So this is actually our being together, our shared economy, our shared future, in a sense, is actually also a very ancient.
From east to west, when the world is particularly challenged by uncertainties, we need to find these crucial voices and be more confident about the future we share. I was encouraged by their perspectives, and here is what I think. I see China today has realized not only deepen exchanges and mutual learning, but also proactively present Chinese culture to the world, as it is part of our common heritage, contributing China's part to collectively take on challenges. It's important for us to take note of papers from the recent 20th National Congress of CPC. There are guideposts to the matters we have been discussing today, and I want to quote here. We will stay firmly rooted in Chinese culture. We will collect and refine the defining symbols and best elements of Chinese culture and share it with the rest of the world. For a journalist like me, I'm excited about this trend. Now I know for sure doing it is going to be even more exciting than coming to understand the significance of it. Of course, how much and how well do I know my own culture is past the stories? How well can I tell those stories, and how can I encourage you to come to this stage and share our collective cultural stories of yesterday and today? I know it's far from easy, but it's going to be fun. Just like in The Journey to the West, the epic Chinese fantasy novel about the journey of Buddhist monk Xuanzang traveling west to India with his 4 disciples, including the famous Monkey King, in search for holy scriptures, but on the way overcame numerous challenges and tests. I guess there would not be any fewer challenges for us, but it's going to be fun. With that, we come to the end of this episode of Looking Ahead 2023. From Beijing, I'm Tian Wei, wishing you a more fruitful year for the year 2023.